When we think of the most significant locations in the Half-Life series, we think of the Citadel of City-17, the horrendous Combine prison of Nova Prospekt, and the place that this whole story started, the Black Mesa Research Facility. There was, however, one more location that was quite possibly more important than all of these. A small resistance lab in City-17 was responsible for the growth of a resistance against the Combine Empire. It was a refuge for many, and most importantly, it was home to a crucial resistance leader. What was this location? Just how did it become so significant in the war against the Combine? And what happened to it after the fall of the Citadel? Here, we explore in the lore and story behind Kleiner's lab in Half-Life. Only a handful of survivors emerged from Black Mesa after the disastrous Black Mesa incident brought portal storms to planet Earth. With these storms came the Combine, and just 7 hours later, humanity submitted to their will. Over the subsequent weeks, the Combine adapted the planet for their needs and placed the human population into settlements as a new era of pain, suffering, and brutality began. In this chaos, the Black Mesa survivors traveled to Eastern Europe and settled within and around the City-17 region. This was an important Combine-occupied area, and these scientists knew that they had to do something. Together, Dr. Eli Vance, Dr. Arnie Magnusson, and Dr. Isaac Kleiner created the Resistance, for in this moment, their hopes of the removal of the Combine Empire from their planet was just a dream. The alien force had shown just how powerful they were. Oceans had been drained, the armies of Earth had fallen, and fear had been instilled within the very core of every human. Yet, the seed of the Resistance was just that, a seed. And if these three scientists worked together, it could flourish into a full-blown uprising. It would just take time. In order to make the most out of this awful predicament, the scientists split up and decided to set up their own resistance bases, each with a speciality. Dr. Arnie Magnusson and a small team travelled the furthest away into a region known as the Outlands. He knew that the Black Mesa Research Corporation had purchased the land of an old Cold War bunker. The Black Mesa incident had meant that they no longer needed it. However, this space would be perfect for a resistance location. For his role in the Resistance, Magnusson focused on the future and worked on a rocket that would hopefully one day be used to close a super portal when the Combine deemed it necessary to call in reinforcements. Dr. Eli Vance, his infant daughter, and a small team moved into the canals of City-17. Just far enough away from the Combine, but close enough to enter the city for expeditions and missions. Within what appeared to be a small, abandoned power generation plant, Eli focused on the development of technological advancement, the exploration of Combine equipment, and raids on Combine facility. This plant had floors and floors deep underground and was a perfect spot to evade the eye of the Combine. As for Dr. Isaac Kleiner, his base was set up within the heart of the Combine occupation, in an obscure warehouse in the downtown district of City-17, right in the shadow of the Combine. The chosen location of this base came with so many risks, yet the risks were worth what it could mean for the Resistance. To keep their task on track, the Resistance bases kept in contact through radio and video link. For a secret base, a secret entrance was also required, in which a Dr. Breen's private reserve vending machine was adapted. This base was located mere blocks away from the City-17 train station, a hub of Combine activity. Powered in secret by a local generator yard, Barney Calhoun, once a security guard at Black Mesa, and Kleiner hacked into the Combine security feed system. In doing this, they had eyes across the whole of the city, a way for them to monitor patrol patterns, incoming and outgoing passengers from the train station, and any notable moments. This information was then fed to the other resistance bases so that the resistance had a grasp on the activities of their enemy. Although the Black Mesa Research Facility had fallen, Kleiner had somehow managed to salvage some important pieces of technology. His work there also gave this resistance a small advantage. Incredible technologies that the Combine were not aware that the population of Earth possessed. Alongside his knowledge and blueprints, Kleiner had also salvaged a photograph of the team he had worked with before the fall of humanity. It was also apparent that he harbored a grudge against the administrator of the facility, Dr. Wallace Breen, who, after the Combine invasion, had become their puppet. As time passed of Combine occupation, this abandoned warehouse became a base of operations for the small resistance. It also became Dr. Kleiner's home. It would be for at least 2 decades. As the years passed, Isaac Kleiner's lab and home became the dominant source of Combine information. However, over in Black Mesa East and White Forest, they required an even greater insight. To get this, Barney Calhoun joined the Civil Protection, essentially the Combine's police force made up of humans that had joined their invaders in return for better housing, food, and a way to let out their aggression. The population during this period was weak, broken, and pumped full of propaganda from posters on the walls, television broadcasts, and broadcasts in the streets. The resistance had a small reach, but it was in these dark days that those who still believed in change sought out a way to achieve it. As a spy in the Civil Protection, Barney Calhoun relayed his information of orders, raids, civilians that could be recruited, and of Combine activities outside of City 17. This information was invaluable to Isaac Kleiner and the rest of the Resistance bases. Kleiner's lab had found its calling in the Resistance, recruitment, and recon. For a resistance, a symbol was required, and what better symbol than that of the Lambda, the symbol that Gordon Freeman had worn on his suit during the Black Mesa incident before he had disappeared. Having formed its foundation in City 17, the Lambda symbol was placed around the city, a way to help those who sought change to find it in the resistance. As the seed of resistance and rebellion grew, the Combine became aware of its existence. To snuff it out before it became any sort of threat, those who had information of resistance activity or were affiliated with them in any way were punished severely. As a spy in the Civil Protection, Barney Calhoun was able to give a heads up to anyone who was suspected so that they could go into hiding. Kleiner's lab became a hub of information as the spies in the Civil Protection offered critical news of upcoming events, informants provided important information, and new recruits joined every day. From once an abandoned warehouse, Kleiner watched in secret and helped who he could, yet recruitment and recon were not all he focused on. Kleiner's lab had helped the resistance grow immensely. The small issue he had was that more and more recruits had joined, but not all of them could be spies. Some were scientists, some were fighters, and some just wanted a life away from the Combine. Eli's base, Black Mesa East, had grown just as much as Kleiner's lab over the creation of the Resistance, and it just so happened to be next to an abandoned village, Ravenholm. The recruited Resistance members would be able to do so much more if they were situated in Black Mesa East. They could help Eli with the development of technology, they could help in the raids of Combine facilities, and the refugees could just live away from the Combine. So, Eli and Isaac came up with a plan to develop a safe route between the bases. Having scouted the region between Kleiner's lab in City 17 and Black Mesa East within the canals, Kleiner and Vance set up the Underground Railroad. It would begin in City 17 and end at Black Mesa East. Upon its completion, the railroad consisted of at least 12 stations connected with a map and a radio system to communicate with each other. This allowed those who lived within, ran them, and travelled the Underground Railroad the ability to report sightings of Combine activity and to inform the next base that a refugee was on the way. Of note, Al and Arlene ran Station 6, an important stop in the secret pathway that was home to an airboat. The creation of the Underground Railroad was a significant moment in Resistance history, as it allowed the members to traverse between bases so that their skills could be utilized. Kleiner and his lab had once again been responsible for the increase in Resistance members and their relocation. Yet, he was limited to this location and it showed. He had made it his home. As Kleiner worked on upgrades, technologies, and experiments for the movement, the environment around him appeared to be a visual map of his life, hobbies, experiences, accomplishments, and failures. Boxes of technology were stored away just in case they were needed. An old copy of the Popular Scientist magazine was pinned to his corkboard, an issue in which he had been photographed for on the front page. A newspaper clipping titled "End is Near" displayed the moment everything changed as the Combine invaded Earth. A happier memory was shown within a photograph of Dr. Eli Vance and his late wife, Asian, one of the many casualties of the Black Mesa incident. Even now, miles apart, Kleiner was regarded as family by Eli, whose infant daughter, Alex, called him Uncle Kleiner. Despite having a close connection to the other leaders of this resistance, Kleiner was mostly alone. Still, he kept himself busy. The headcrabs that had invaded Black Mesa during the incident had taken out a large chunk of the personnel. Over their years of occupation on Earth, it appeared that they had changed. Having been able to capture one of these fleshy beasts, Kleiner examined them and determined that they had either evolved or mutated to be better suited to Earth's environment. The eyes they had once had were gone. Upon further exploration, Kleiner discovered that the headcrabs were able to control their hosts through a hidden, sharp beak. He theorized that if he were able to remove this beak, it would remove their innate aggression. Having captured another headcrab, Kleiner successfully performed the debeaking procedure, and just as he had estimated, the headcrab became passive. With a headcrab that did not attempt to break into his skull, and with room in his heart for a pet to care for, Kleiner took in the headcrab as his own. He called her Lamar, named after one of his favorite people, Hedy Lamarr, a famous actress and scientist. During World War II, Hedy had co-invented a radio guidance system. Alongside his work in the taming of beasts, Kleiner also adapted an old hazardous environment suit, a suit Gordon Freeman had worn before he had disappeared. Through many adaptations, he crafted the Mark V and upgraded it to be powered by the Combine energy outlets that the units used. The seed of the resistance had grown and thrived over these years, and Kleiner's lab had mostly been responsible for its growth. It had offered and would continue to offer large amounts of information from inside of and outside of Combine ranks. Most importantly, many of the recruits had been able to flee the city to play their role in an eventual uprising. The development of the Underground Railroad was an incredibly important installation for the Resistance. It was, however, not perfect. Sometimes refugees were discovered and captured between checkpoints, and even worse, the creatures of the wasteland saw these humans and Vortigaunt as food. Barnacles, antlions, and even ichthyosaur were feared amongst the population. As scientists at the Black Mesa Research Facility, these men had worked on and with those who had developed teleportation technology. Secret blueprints and schematics of interdimensional travel had also been available to them. On Kleiner's corkboard, he had managed to either salvage one of these schematics or drawn up his own based on his memory and knowledge of the experiments Black Mesa had performed. Within each of their bases, Kleiner and Vance worked together to develop a teleportation device that could, if successful, instantly transport a refugee from one base to the other. Over years of work, Alex grew up and she used everything her father had taught her to help in this effort. She traveled between City 17 and Black Mesa East with parts and salvage for both bases. She even created her own little base in an apartment in City 17. Another scientist also joined the Resistance, Judith Mossman, and she also helped in the development of the teleporter. The issue they had was that they could not get it to work. Black Mesa had used a focus device on Zen to travel to the border world. The Resistance simply wanted to travel to a different location within the same dimension. In theory, they believed that if they could use Zen's focus device as a slingshot, it would essentially swing them back to a different location on Earth. This teleportation technology was incredibly important to the future of the Resistance, and to protect it just in case the Combine discovered Kleiner's lab, Isaac hid the device in a secret room with the only access through a retinal scanner calibrated to only the highest ranking members of the Resistance. For years, the team worked together and made major strides. A mini teleporter was even developed. Unfortunately, during their testing of the large device, on one occasion, a cat was used and it did not meet a great end. This event left Barney Calhoun with nightmares for years. Approximately 20 years after the Combine invasion, on a day like any other, Alex Vance traveled through City 17 with a transmitter that she, Eli, and Isaac believed would complete the teleporter. As she arrived and they began to test that this part functioned correctly, Kleiner received a video call from Barney Calhoun. Calhoun was currently undercover working in the City 17 train station, and under his observation of the security cameras, he had noticed someone familiar, Dr. Gordon Freeman. Many had believed him to be dead after his disappearance during the Black Mesa incident, but here he was, alive. Oddly enough, he had not aged a day. The Resistance always needed more scientists, so Kleiner instructed his old friend to make his way to his lab. This was a red letter day, a memorable day that would change everything. To help Gordon through the city, Alex met with him and brought the scientist back. Upon his arrival in Kleiner's lab, the two old friends reunited and Kleiner returned Gordon's HEV suit, only it had been upgraded. Freeman had returned on the very day the teleporter that Isaac, Alex, Eli and Judith had worked on for years, to test it and get Gordon to Black Mesa East where his scientific mind could be put to use. Kleiner suggested Freeman be one of the first to use it. In one of the most important moments in this entire timeline, Alex went through and successfully arrived within Black Mesa East. However, on Gordon's turn, Lamar jumped out of a vent and accidentally sabotaged the teleportation sequence. Gordon was pulled through many locations, and his return was noted by the Combine. As for Isaac, he proposed that Gordon traverse the Underground Railroad to reach Black Mesa East instead. The failure of the teleportation sequence had damaged the teleporter, and as he said goodbye to Gordon, Kleiner worked on the reconstruction of the device. As the days passed, Kleiner and his spies heard word of the chaos Gordon had created on his way to Black Mesa East. He was also saddened to hear that the Combine had not only discovered the Black Mesa East, but they had also conducted a full-on raid in which Eli Vance had been captured. The good news was that Gordon and Alex had escaped. All Dr. Kleiner could do was his part for the resistance within his lab. Then he received a call from Alex. She and Gordon had managed to break into Nova Prospekt to rescue her father. To escape the Combine threat within, Alex requested that they teleport from the prison, in which the Combine had developed their own teleporter, to Kleiner's lab. Having kept Lamar away from this device, Isaac prepared his teleporter and waited for them to arrive. After several hours, the secret teleporter in Kleiner's lab remained stagnant, and reports of the destruction of Nova Prospekt spread across the Resistance airwaves. In a short period of mourning, the Resistance believed that Alex and Gordon had died in the explosion. On a better note, the Vortigaunt prisoners within the Citadel relayed through the Vortessence to the free Vortigaunt that Eli had been taken there. Having become the symbol of the Resistance during his return, the Resistance saw the death of Gordon Freeman and the fall of Nova Prospekt, a Combine stronghold, as a spark to finally begin their war. As the Resistance all came together, City 17 turned into a war zone as Resistance fought through the streets, block by block, and took down the Combine units that attempted to stop them. Kleiner's lab was instrumental in this moment, as the lab was transformed into a space for the fighters to come together to plan, plot, and strike. Isaac was not necessarily a fighter, but he too grabbed a shotgun just in case the Combine attacked his lab. He also put the lab into full lockdown with a security door. Any manhacks that scouted the area were also shot down and brought to the lab in case Kleiner had a use for them. Over the next week, the Resistance fought hard and managed to gain ground against those who supported the Combine as Kleiner began to move his belongings out of the base. Then he heard the familiar sound of his teleporter as he opened the door to the secret region of the lab. Kleiner saw Gordon and Alex. They were not dead, and he theorized that at the point of the teleportation, Nova Prospekt had exploded and launched them into a slow teleport. To them, the traversal between the prison and the lab had taken seconds, when in reality, it had been a whole week. City 17 was no longer a safe region. Alex also recognized this. Isaac was essential to the survival of the Resistance, and it was decided that he should leave. Magnuson had worked on this stage of the Uprising for 2 decades, and it was decided Kleiner should travel there. In these final moments, Kleiner tracked down Lamar, a photo of the Black Mesa personnel, a hula doll, and then he left. Dr. Kleiner's lab had been one of the most important locations in the wasteland. It had helped foster a safe environment for the Resistance to thrive, a starting point for the Underground Railroad, new technologies to be developed, and most importantly, the place Dr. Gordon Freeman had emerged as the symbol and ultimate leader of this resistance. The uprising led to the fall of the Citadel, and with it, everything within miles of City 17 was eviscerated, even Kleiner's lab. All of his memories, activities, and treasured belongings were gone, but the lab had completed its purpose. It had grown the Resistance and allowed it to thrive. Kleiner's lab was absolutely one of the most important locations in the Half-Life timeline. I loved both of the short visits we had there as the player. Not only did it give us such an amazing way to understand what had happened in our 20-year absence through the scenic storytelling, but it also allowed us to properly meet Alex, Barney, and Isaac. Half-Life 2 is an iconic game, and this is mostly in part to the characters with so much lore and background, but also the tiny bits of storytelling in the environment that you may not register straight away. These details just kind of make sense in this terrible world. This was quite a simple video this week. I wanted to look at a loved location and explore how it really impacted the wider world of Half-Life. From a glance, Kleiner's lab was just that, a lab that we visited twice during the story, when in reality, it helped the Resistance thrive, allowed spies to infiltrate Combine ranks, and it spread out into the wasteland through the Underground Railroad. It was an iconic and very important region. That was everything I wanted to cover this week, so please like the video if you liked it, please share it with other Half-Life fans, dislike it if you disliked it, and most importantly, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Finally, I would like to thank my gold tier patrons and channel members: Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Duke, Toadnut, Oren X, Azu, Karatana, AJ, Verona, Comfy, BG Games, Apravis, Arnis, Blaze of Glory, Cole Sherman, Yauli Rodriguez, Nabar, and 501st Clone Boy. Which is your favourite Resistance base? Do you think the slow teleport is connected in any way to stasis? And what would you like me to cover next? Please let me know in the comments below. This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.